Hello everyone, Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching. I have another Monday quarterback video for you. I'm going to play this video and talk about things that are going on to better explain what's going on and talk about things that I think that are being done right and or done wrong. Without further ado, here we go.
Hello, I'm Neil Oakes, Chief of Police for the Fort Worth Police Department. I'm here to provide some information on the officer-involved shooting that occurred on August 28th, 2022. Please keep in mind that although we're providing this information, the investigation is still in its early stages and we're collecting more information. That investigation and all evidence will be turned over to the Tarrant County District Attorney's Office for review and to the grand jury for review as well.
All units be advised, Hill County is in pursuit of a white Toyota Prius. Subject is armed with a handgun. Subject also has a passenger in the vehicle. The male has threatened to shoot the passenger. They are asking for our assistance.
At about 7:23 p.m., Fort Worth officers were notified of the pursuit, and they assisted the agency once it entered our city on 35 going northbound. At the Spur 280 exit, the vehicle collided with the guardrail and came to a stop. The officers involved in the pursuit attempted to conduct a felony stop of the vehicle. They ordered the occupants out of the vehicle, but they could not see inside due to debris, deployed airbags, and other items in the rear window.
Airline, it looks like he has several people.
And other items in the, but they could not see inside due to debris.
All right, so so far it is a vehicle pursuit that has originated out of their jurisdiction. It's entered their jurisdiction, and it has terminated in their jurisdiction. So they decide to do a felony stop on the vehicle. The vehicle is already stopped, so it's not like they've got them to pull over. They just kind of crashed. What is a felony stop? It's also known as a high-risk stop. When you think of a normal traffic stop, let's say you ran a stop sign and an officer gets behind you and lights you up. When you pull over and stop, the officer is going to get out and walk up to your car and talk to you. That is a what people call a routine traffic stop. And then now there's people who are screaming at the screen saying there's no such thing as a routine traffic stop. Yeah, I get that. But a normal traffic stop is how that goes. A felony traffic stop or a high-risk traffic stop, officers do not walk up to that car at the beginning. Instead, officers will take cover behind their vehicle and will issue loud verbal commands or use the PA system, the speaker on the car, to call out to the occupant or occupants of that vehicle. Through these verbal instructions, they may tell the driver to roll all the windows down in the vehicle, take the keys out of the vehicle, throw them out the window, set them on the roof, telling people in the car to keep their hands up where they can be seen. And if there's multiple people in the vehicle, one by one, each person will be ordered to exit the vehicle, hands up, walk back to the sound of the officer's voice. They'll get them to walk back pretty close to the police cars. Have them go down to their knees and cross ankles, most likely. And then an officer will come out from behind the vehicles, snatch that person up, cuff them, drag them back to the vehicles, secure them, and then they'll call the next person out of the vehicle and have them come back. And then once everyone that's visible is out of the vehicle, they'll challenge the vehicle again verbally, calling out to it like there's someone in it. That way, if there is someone in it, they'll actually, and they do abide by verbal instructions, they'll come out. But eventually, officers do approach that vehicle. They approach it with guns drawn. They'll come up. Ideally, it's best if you can have the occupants leave the doors open as they exit the vehicle. And if you can do that, then officers can slowly approach forward and diagonally to the vehicle and start pieing it, so to speak, so they can start peering in through those open doors without getting up super close to the vehicle and see if anyone's in it that way. If the doors end up being closed, then the officers will have to go up to the vehicle, get close to it, and basically do a peekaboo kind of move and clear the interior of the vehicle that way, and then clear the trunk, make sure there's no one in there. And then at that point, everyone's guns can be holstered, put on safe, etc. So that's a felony stop. It's just a safe, controlled way to get people to get out of the vehicle and come back to them. But that's if those people are compliant. And then it goes into having to actually go in there and physically remove those people. And this is where they're getting to at this point. They've obviously exhausted, verbal commands and stuff to them to come out. It is not happening. It is a hostage situation. So now they are going to have to move forward to get these people out of the vehicle.
3 deployed airbags and other items in the rear window.
Air 1, it looks like he has several people in there, and possibly something. Looks like he's got a gun to somebody's neck. A female passenger, and he looks like the driver is the female. Looks like he's got a gun to her neck. LS 35, Hill 131. Not sure if you can read this. Our dispatch is trying to advise you that prior to this line disconnecting, the female advised she has been shot in the abdomen.
Officers became aware that the suspect was holding an adult female victim at gunpoint against her will and not allowing her to exit. The female victim and the suspect began struggling, and officers heard a gunshot from inside the vehicle. Fort Worth PD officers formed a rescue team and approached the vehicle on the driver's side. When the officers reached the vehicle, they saw that the suspect had the victim laying on top of him and using her as a human shield. Officers gave the suspect multiple commands to drop the weapon that he was pointing at the victim's abdomen, but he refused to comply.
Rescue, rescue, rescue. Rescue, rescue, rescue. Let's go. We're going. We're going. Stay together. Rescue, rescue, rescue.
So,
Rescue, rescue, rescue. Let's go. We're going. We're going. Stay together.
it looks like this might be a specialized team. Back it up.
Rescue, rescue, rescue.
We see he's got some type of tab or a couple of tabs right there on his sleeve above a department patch. Typically, you don't see those kind of things on regular patrol uniforms. So there's probably a pretty good chance this guy's on a specialized team of some sort. And of course, they've got the tactical combat shirts on with the arm pockets on them and the Velcro. Not typically always something that you see patrol wearing. So it looks like they have got this part of a SWAT team there. It could be the whole SWAT team. I don't know how they have their stuff set up. But it looks like this is probably a specialized unit that's now taken over. You see the shield back here. They've got their rifles out. Which even if this was not a specialized team or anything like that, this situation in and of itself dictates that rifles need to come out. So even regular patrol guys should be having their rifles out on this call.
Rescue, rescue, rescue. Let's go. We're going. We're going.
He's got on a hat that's backwards, and this guy has on a ballistic helmet with rails on the side to hold his ear pro, hearing protection. We can see another vehicle over here. These guys look a little bit different.
Rescue, rescue, let's go. We're going. We're going. Stay together.
Looks like those guys over there could be normal patrol guys, but I'm not 100% sure of the organizational stuff here. Now he has he has a nice helmet on here. He's got a high cut helmet with these rails on the side, and the rails are holding these hearing protection devices, but he doesn't even have them on properly. This is actually a pretty common thing that I see in other videos, and even in photographs of incidents. Officers not wearing their PPE correctly. And this is, to me, indicative of it's a training scar, and there's probably a lot more how to word it. There's a lot more wearing of this gear in an administrative garrison kind of capacity than there is wearing it and using it with actual hands-on fight training. And what I mean by that is, for training purposes, this person has probably worn this helmet in this way, sitting around more, jaw jacking, when nothing's going on, there's no task going on, they pull the cups away, and this is how they're used to always standing around with this helmet on until they are specifically tasked to go do the thing within a training environment. On a normal range with hearing pro, just regular hearing pro, the earmuffs, the electronic ones that you just slip over your head, even on ranges, you can see people slipping those things off. And they'll have them, some guys will, depending on, the size of their legs and their body, they can take those and wrap it around their thigh, and they'll stand around and talk. And then when it comes time to shoot, they'll take their electronic ear pro off their leg, or they'll loop it around their bicep, and they'll take it off and they'll put it on, do the shooting, and then they take it off and wrap it around the leg or the arm, or they just raise it up. So they'll take the muffs off their ears, and they'll just raise the headset up and have it sitting on their temples, and then they'll sit around and talk. When it comes to electronic hearing protection, that makes no sense to me whatsoever. The electronic hearing protection has microphones on them to pick up sound, and then it has speakers inside it so that you can hear what is coming through those microphones. It makes it so that you don't have to take your hearing protection off when you're on the shooting range. You can keep it on the entire time because it has the microphones that amplify sound and allow you to hear conversations. And then when the shooting happens, it shuts off and doesn't allow those loud sounds to go through and becomes shooting muffs, right? So when I see people not wearing their electronic ear pro all the time, the way they should be on the range, it makes no sense to me. Why are they doing this? The whole idea behind the fucking things being electronic with microphones and speakers is so that you can wear the damn things continuously, hear conversations, hear what's going on, and never have to take them off. That way, if there is a sudden shots fired on the range during training and you didn't have time to put your ear pro on, you've already got it on. It's not something you have to be worrying about. So this to me shows that during training, this person probably wore their helmet and their ear pro in this same fashion. They did not keep it. They did not keep the ear cups locked in all the time like they should be. And so that's a training scar. So when you wear this equipment incorrectly, then it develops into being a training scar. Same in the sense that rifles, like, why do you see so many people not utilizing the sling on their rifle correctly, or not even using it at all? Why do you see so many people take their rifle or their shotgun that has a sling on it and they lay it on the ground or they lean it up against the wall and then do a task? Why are you doing that? You need to be slinging that rifle on you, retaining that rifle on you. There's a sling on it. That's the purpose of the fucking sling, so you don't have to lay the motherfucker on the ground or lean it against the wall. These are training scars. People are building these habits with these items in a way that they do not need to be building these habits. And that's what leads to this. This guy is going in to the hot zone with ear pro that's not even on correctly. He is using a baton to attempt to break glass here.
Don't do it! Don't do it! Don't do it! Break out the window! Break out the window! Break out the window! Break out the window! Don't you do it! Break the window! Take your hand out the window! Don't you do it! Break the window!
So that is typically what happens when you use a baton to try and break glass. It does not always work on the first swing. That's why batons are not great tools for breaking glass. There are end caps for the batons that you can get that have a point on it that is designed to be used to break glass, but the actual baton itself, the piece that comes out that you use to hit people with, using that to break glass is not always the best thing to use. A lot of times you'll see guys try to swing on a side window on a car and the baton bounces back. It happens. It's just physics, right? There are certain places to hit on windows that give you a better chance of having that glass break. Generally, it's hitting the corners of that glass. So go, top left corner, top right corner, bottom left corner, bottom right corner, whatever. Instead of going in the middle of the window pane, go to one of the corners, strike there, and you are more likely to cause that glass to break. The best thing to use to break glass is a tool that is designed to break glass. So he could have had a simple window punch that he could have come up, window punch in one hand, reach in, it breaks, and then use the baton to rake the window, get all the glass out from there. Or there's a hammer type of device that has a pointed end on it that is made to break glass. You could use that. Or a Halligan tool that has a pointed end on it, and hit the corner of a glass, you can cause it to break, and then use the whole Halligan tool to rake the window itself. Breaking window glass it can be challenging if you don't have the right tools to do it. And then just the construction of the glass itself. So the front windshield is going to be the toughest glass to break. You can take a window punch and hold it against a windshield, and it will crack the glass. But that glass isn't going anywhere because you have a sandwich, essentially, of glass, laminate glass. way back in the day, front windshields were just glass. But over the years of people being thrown through the front windshield, being ejected out of the vehicle, that large glass shards causing more injuries and stuff like that, the design of windshields became different, and instead of it just being simple glass, it then became glass, laminate glass. That way, when you break that glass, that laminate material that's in between it keeps that glass chunks and shards in place so that they do not become debris that can cause serious physical injury, and so that the people just don't go flying through the windshield as easily. Now, you can still have people go flying through the windshield on a modern car. Happens a lot. But at least while they're being ejected out of it, the glass doesn't break, and you have like a big shard that acts as a big cutting tool and cuts them from sternum to pubic region and guts them like a fish. Side windows are easier to break and have them crumble. So they're made out of it's called safety glass, and whenever you break a side window on a car, it just crumbles into like little pebbles, basically. It's just designed to do that. With window tint being a more popular thing, the glass still crumbles like it should when you break it, but because there's tint on it, that tint acts like one big thing of tape, and it keeps all the glass crumble together for the most part. Now, you'll still have some large pieces that kind of break off and everything, but it'll still be kind of hanging there in a somewhat semi-solid form, so to speak. You can still very easily rake it and get it out of the way, but it's still something that, it's an extra step to have to contend with if there's tint on it. If there's no tint on it whatsoever, it'll just kind of crumble and fall out. Now, you might have like a little patch here that stays in place, but literally you can just slap it with your hand and it will completely fall free and fall out of the way. One of the risks with glass is, of course, it getting in your eyes. So you always want to wear eye protection when you go to break glass, and ideally have gloves on when you go to break glass. Especially, using a window punch, you pressing into the corner of the window. There's resistance. You're pressing, and then it pops, and then your hand goes flying through the opening that is now there, because there's no more heavy resistance being made, and you've got all this pressure behind that punch. Window finally breaks and gives, and now your hand flies forward. Well, that can cause injuries to you, cut your hand, have a glass shard, or not glass shard, but have glass go into your hand, etc. So wearing gloves is an important thing, and eye protection is an important thing when breaking glass.
Take your hand off the gun! Take your hand off the gun now! Take your hand off the gun! Drop it! Drop the gun! Drop the gun! Drop the gun!
So it looks like the magazine is not even in the gun.
The gun! Take your hand off the gun now! Take your hand off the gun! Drop the gun! Take your hand off the gun!
And it looks like the slot is either locked back or it's out of battery.
Now! Take your hand off the gun! Drop it! Drop the gun! Drop the gun! Drop the gun! Drop the gun!
Yeah, there's no magazine in that gun.
Drop the gun!
Alright, so we hear 2 rounds go off.
Hey! Hey! Do it! Don't do it! Break out the window! Break out the window! Break out the window! Don't you do it! Break the window!
So it looks like he utilizes his rifle to help break the window.
Don't you do it! Break the window! Take your hand off the gun! Take your hands off the gun now! Take your hands off the gun!
Yeah, so definitely this slide is back.
Drop it! I'll take it! Drop the gun! Drop the gun!
Yeah, it is for sure locked back.
Drop the gun! Drop the gun! Drop the gun!
Hearing the
So what I was talking about, glass, the side glass breaking. So you can see that it mostly crumbled away, and there's still little pieces sticking out, and you can see how it's kind of turned into, you just see all these cracks along the way. It kind of turns into pebbles almost. But that's what I was talking about, like some pieces could still be sticking out. I mean, all this dude has to do is just tap it, and that stuff will crumble and go out of the way. But when you do push your hand through that window on a window punch, the glass that's sticking out like this, it can still cut you, even though it's very fragile, I guess you could say.
Drop the gun! Drop it! No! Hey! Break out the window! Break out the window!
Back it up to the first one there.
Don't do it! Break out the window! Break out the window! Break out the window! Break out the window! Don't you do it! Break the window! Take your hand off the gun! Take your hand off the gun now! Take your hand off the gun! Drop it! Drop the gun! Now! Take your hand
Alright, so you can see his face right there.
off the gun! Drop it! Drop the gun! 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 The gun! Drop the gun! Drop the gun! Drop it! Drop the gun! Drop! Take your hand off!
Now where they end up shooting him at, I don't know. Now, like I said, we can see that this gun does not have a magazine in it and the slide is back. Now, does that mean that there is no round in the breech? No, there could still be a round in the breech. It could be that there is some type of debris in the breech that is preventing the slide from going all the way forward. So he could, if that slide rocks forward, have a live round in the gun. One round. That one round could either be used on her, it could be used on one of those officers. It's still a potential threat at this point. There's also the possibility that they don't even notice it, right? This is what we call a luxury. This right here, being able to replay segments of the video multiple times, lean in, look at it, pause it at different moments, and get a good idea of what's going on. You don't have that ability when it's live. When it's fucking happening right then and there, you can't pull a Zach Morris and say, time out, and then start studying the scene and seeing what's going on. That does not exist. It's live. It is going right then and there. And when the human body and brain goes through fight, flight, freeze syndrome, there are psychological and physiological things that occur to a person. One of those being tunnel vision. So for these officers, they may not see in great detail that gun. They may see this guy's face, and they may be looking through their sights, trying to get a good shot. They saw the gun on the approach. They know the gun's there, but they're not staring at the gun. They're staring at him and her and trying to get their fields of fire right so that if they have to press trigger, they can do it and hit this guy and not her. So there's a good chance that the officer whose camera we're watching through right now, him looking through his rifle sight, he has no idea that there's no magazine in the gun or the slide is partially back or even locked all the way back. He may not even recognize that one single fucking bit. And even if he did recognize that there's not a magazine in the gun, or it doesn't appear that there's one in the gun, it appears the slide's a little bit back and out of battery. Like I said earlier, there could still be a round in the breech. It could be that all he has to do is drop that slide and he can get one round off. It's still a deadly physical threat. Now, at this point of them breaking glass, they know already this is a hostage. She's been shot by him. They get up there. He's got the gun pointed at her and is threatening to kill her. Talking is done. They did their talking back when they were trying to follow through with the felony high-risk stop, getting them to come out with verbal commands. That was the talking phase right there. This is the action phase. This does not require any more talking. This requires work. Once that window was breached, it's time to do work. Look for work. They got the work right there in front of them. Now they got to solve the equation. How do I put lead in this motherfucker snot box and not hit the innocent person? The easiest, simplest thing that I can think of is once this window's been breached and there's no longer a barrier to contend with, I think this officer with the rifle should have just taken the muzzle of the rifle, rammed it forward, straight into that guy's fucking face, and pressed trigger. That would have been the simplest thing to do. Or ram that muzzle, as that guy's yelling and talking, ram that muzzle straight into his fucking mouth and press trigger. That would be the simplest, easiest thing to do. You still got to think that at this point there is offset that is still in play here. And offset is your barrel and your sight. There's offset right there. So, a laser beam coming out of your barrel and a laser beam coming out of your sight, those two are not going to match up. There's going to be a distance vertically from your bore and your sight plane. up close. Now, when your rifle is zeroed at a distance, those two things match up, right? Like a 50-yard zero. Your sight matches up with the trajectory of that bullet at 50 yards. They meet, they coincide beautifully. Before and after that, they may be a little bit off because of bullet trajectory going up and then down, and then your sight plane being completely straight like a laser. So from zero to from bad breath distance out to a certain distance, you have to factor in offset. So when you're up close and you're aiming your sight at the bullseye, directly at the bullseye, your barrel is a little bit lower. So when you press that trigger, that round is not going to hit bullseye. It's going to hit below bullseye. So with rifle, when you're up close, you have to take your sight and move it up. Hold it above where you're wanting those rounds to go into. Then press trigger and round goes in. This right here being so close, the bad guy being so close to her, you see just a sliver of his face. Like I said, the easiest thing to do, in my opinion, is ram that rifle forward, put that muzzle straight into his face, and press trigger, and be done with it.
Drop the gun! Drop it! Drop the gun! Drop the gun! Drop the gun! Drop the gun! Drop the gun!
So you can see that he has his ear pro locked in the correct way.
Break the window! Take your hand off the gun! Take your hand off the gun now! Take your hand off the gun! Drop it!
I'll take it.
Drop the gun! 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 Drop it!
I'll take it.
So it's possible that this officer noticed that the gun appeared to be empty and he's trying to take it from the guy.
Drop the gun! Drop the gun! Drop the gun! Drop the gun!
Fearing that the suspect would shoot the female hostage again, 2 Florida PD officers fired their weapons, striking the suspect. They then quickly removed the victim from the vehicle so medical aid could be provided. Seeing that an ambulance would have a difficult time reaching the location due to heavy traffic, officers made the quick decision to transport the victim to the hospital in a patrol vehicle.
So that is this right here is the reason why I talk about the need to have the medical gear and the medical knowledge. Back that up so it's let me get the right freeze frame here.
They then quickly removed the victim from the vehicle so medical aid could be provided. Seeing that an ambulance would have
Difficult time for an ambulance to reach the location due to heavy traffic. An ambulance is not something that can get there right then and there. It's not something that is instantaneous. The response time can be several minutes. It could be 7 minutes response time. It could be a 15-minute response time before someone gets there to you. When it comes to traumatic injuries, the longer you wait, the longer that pre-hospital care is delayed, the higher the chance of a person dying or becoming permanently disabled for the rest of their life increases. With pre-hospital care, there are 2 terminologies that are used often. One is platinum 10, and the other is the golden hour. So the platinum 10 refers to the first 10 minutes. Within the first 10 minutes of a person incurring a traumatic injury, if you can provide to them pre-hospital care you can increase their chances of survival by X amount percent. Now, I can't remember what those percentages are, but it's a lot. The golden hour. If you can, within an hour of a person incurring a traumatic injury, provide to them pre-hospital care and get them to a physician within an hour to a hospital, you increase their chances of survival by X amount of percent. Again, I don't remember what that is, but it's a lot. Pre-hospital care has come a long way over the years, over the decades. Back in the day, before ambulances, this was how it was done. They threw people in the back of the fucking car and drove as fast as they could to get to the hospital. In fact, way back in the day, it was common for the local funeral home to go perform this kind of thing. Sheriff's office get a call about a car accident way out in the county. They get there's people all fucked up. They'd call the funeral home. Funeral home would come out there because they had a vehicle that was made to carry people in a laying position, right? And the people were still alive in the wreck. They'd pull them out, put them in the back of that hearse, and that hearse would take off and go to the hospital. Nobody in the back with them. They just throw them in the back and take off. Well, that's why you see old school ambulances that look like hearses. Because that's how that fucking started out. They started modifying hearses to become ambulances. And so you started seeing in different places, it would still be the funeral home maybe, but there would be a person who would go with them. It would be someone trained in medicine. And then it evolved to, people buying the old hearse from the funeral home and then retrofitting it out to be an ambulance, putting lights and siren on it. And then the same companies that were building these hearses, they knew what was going on. They knew what these vehicles were being used for, and they started outfitting their vehicles from the manufacturer to become ambulances. So like you see like old 1950s and 60s hearses, they're ambulances. That's why. That's the history behind it. And it wasn't until the 1970s that EMS kind of became more of a standardized thing, or there's an effort, a push to start standardizing it all across the board so it's very similar all across the nation. And that's when you start seeing ambulances like you do today. Big box trucks, big vans, stuff like that. More purposely built for that. Not like, we're going to take a hearse and make it an ambulance. No, we're going to build the ambulance from the ground up. Like, this is purpose-built shit. So when you look at mortality rates and stuff within those different time frames, from like 1930s to 1970s to 1990s to now, the death rate for, vehicle accidents and shit like that was a lot higher because pre-hospital medical care was just not to what it is today. You just didn't have a whole lot of people trained in how to do certain stuff. And as technology and training improved over the years, the rates in the 70s were a lot different than the 1930s. The rates in the 90s a lot different than the 1970s, and the 2000s a lot different than the 1990s. Better technology and better training is saving lives. The only reason why our current murder rate here in America is as low as it is due to pre-hospital medical care and hospital care. Medical technology. That is the only reason why our murder rate is not through the fucking roof. Our attempted murder, our aggravated assaults, our assault first, those are through the roof. But because someone is good at their craft, someone is a good medic, someone is a good doctor, those murder rates stay low because the people who are shot and stabbed don't end up dying. So our technology is good and our training is good, or it can be good so long as you take it. Our mindset with a lot of people is not good. So there are a lot of officers out there who wrongfully believe that if something happens, the ambulance will come and take care of them. That's fucked up. That is a fucked up mindset to have. It is. Like, totally wrong. That's like saying you're okay with not having any fire extinguishers in your home because you can rely on the fire department to get there on time. That's like saying you don't need a gun to protect your family and your home because you could call the police and they could get there on time. We all recognize that's fucking bullshit. That is stupid as fuck. If you recognize the fact that you need a gun because it takes too long for police to get there, then you should recognize the fact that you should carry medical gear because it could take too long for an ambulance to get there. And this is not so much from the mindset of being able to save other people. This should be the mindset, first and foremost, to save your ass, to save you. If you carry a gun for a living, whether you're an armed citizen or you're paid to carry that gun in your profession, then you should recognize the fact that you could be involved in a gunfight. And you should recognize that gunfights mean that bullets go both ways, both directions. It's a two-way fucking range. And you could get hit by one of those incoming rounds. I'm a firm believer that if you're going to carry the tools to induce trauma, you should carry the tools to reduce trauma. Not just the tools, but the knowledge behind it as well. You don't just carry a gun and have no training behind it, right? I mean, there are some people out there who carry a gun and have no training, and they're more fucked up than a football bat. But you recognize that you should have some training behind a gun, right? Like in the police profession, we just don't hand police officers guns and say, go forth and conquer. We put some training in there behind it so they know what they're doing with it. Same with medical gear. Like, you just can't carry the medical gear and it's going to be a talisman. You have to know how to use this stuff. Most agencies and companies will do the bare minimum, and by the bare minimum, we'll start with training and then I'll talk about the gear. At bare minimum, companies and agencies will provide officers with CPR, AED, first aid training, either through American Red Cross or American Heart Association's BLS. That is a very, very basic course. The bulk of it is CPR, AED. Right? That's the bread and butter of that class. Learn how to do CPR and how to run the AED. In addition to that is the first aid stuff. Well, the first aid stuff is a very basic knowledge of general first aid. And it encompasses more than just trauma, like being stabbed or having a cut and you're bleeding. It also involves things like environmental emergencies, someone having a heat stroke, someone suffering from hypothermia, a person having an allergic reaction to a bug bite or a bee sting, how to assist in administering the epinephrine pen for them, how to assist in administering an inhaler to someone who is having respiratory problems. It goes into how to help someone if they've fallen off a ladder at work. It does go into how to apply pressure to a wound, how to wrap a wound with bandaging to get it to stop bleeding. But these are minor type of injuries that this training is covering. It does not cover gunshot wounds. It does not cover stab wounds. It's not that intense of a training. You go to a normal CPR 80 first aid class, and I guarantee you are most likely never going to find a training tourniquet in that class. There might be a video on it. It's an optional video. It's not a mandatory video that gets shown. It may be an optional video that can be played if someone has a question about it. But I can guarantee you, you're not going to find a training tourniquet in one of those classes. You're most likely going to find a training epinephrine pen. You're most likely going to find a training inhaler. You're most likely going to find a roll of gauze that's used in training to practice putting a bandage on someone. You're most likely to see a triangular bandage that you can use and practice in class to make a cravat out of it, an arm sling. You're not likely to find chest seals in a CPR first aid class or instruction on how to use chest seals. You may see a bag valve mask and instruction on how to use it. You're not likely to find instruction on how to insert a nasopharyngeal airway or an oropharyngeal airway. So although a CPR 80 first aid class is a good class to have, and I do think that at a baseline minimum, that should be a prerequisite in order to graduate high school here in America. You should have to go through a CPR 80 first aid class. And so I say that, I think it's good. It's also not that great. There is more better training to be able to get to deal with traumatic injuries like gunshot wounds and stab wounds. So the training methodology for that kind of stuff with first aid stuff, your basic first aid boo-boo stuff, does not necessarily coincide with the tactical stuff of first aid. So the tactical training for that is what is called TCCC, Tactical Combat Casualty Care. This is a way of treating patients in a tactical environment during armed conflict. Some of the concepts between the domestic stuff and the tactical stuff can be the same. You know, you're still going to apply pressure to wounds. You're still going to put dressings on wounds. Your airway stuff, you know, establishing airway, using nasopharyngeal airway. Those are the basic. That's going to be the basic stuff. Some of the order in which you do those things or how you go about doing those things is going to be a little bit different. And so, the training aspect on that, like I said, most places go through that basic class, and it's good basic knowledge to have, but there has to be more. There has to be that TCCC level of training for the tactical application of this type of stuff. You have to learn how to correctly utilize a tourniquet. You have to know what the different styles of tourniquets are and their pros and cons. You have to know how to use a chest seal. You have to know how to insert, how to measure a nasopharyngeal airway and how to insert a nasopharyngeal airway. You have to know how to measure an oropharyngeal airway and insert an oropharyngeal airway. You have to know the contradictions for those. You have to recognize what cerebral spinal fluid is and know what a basilar skull fracture is, and know that you should not fucking try to insert a nasopharyngeal airway on someone who has signs that's indicative of them having a basilar skull fracture, because you're going to insert that goddamn nasopharyngeal airway into their fucking brain. That kind of stuff is not covered very clearly in those basic CPR 80 first aid classes. It's not that advanced. So you've got to have the right training for this application here. When it comes to gear, again, agencies and companies will do the cheapest thing possible, and they will oftentimes do the things that are administratively or statutorily required of them to do. So these agencies out there that really like boasting the fact that they're an accredited agency, or they want, some standard in place. These accreditation companies, some of the stuff they do, I think, is kind of bullshit. But some of those requirements for an agency to become an accredited agency, a lot of that is administrative stuff, like how they do their files and everything. But some of it is, some of the things they have in place physically, and that can be first aid kits. So, to receive accreditation, an agency may be required to show proof that they have first aid kits in all patrol vehicles. They have first aid kits in all the workstations of a place, and that those kits are fully stocked at all times. Not just a half-assed, first aid kit that, everyone's robbed here and there, so to speak, over the course of a couple months, and now there's only 2 Band-Aids left in it, or there's only a tongue depressor, tweezers, and a cold pack left in it. It has to be a fully stocked thing. And it just says first aid kit. And so what a lot of agencies will do is they'll look at this requirement, like, hey, we have to have X amount of first aid kits, and they will find a vendor that they can buy the cheapest first aid kits from, and they'll put those first aid kits in those places where they're required to have them to meet that checklist. And some places, here's the funny part, here's the kicker. Some places, when they do this, because those things get checked by the evaluators to do accreditation, they'll do shit like wrap tape around that first aid box, or put a zip tie around the handle or whatever, and tell people don't use it. I shit you not. That shit happens in places. Or they'll buy a first aid box that still has like the plastic wrap around it, and they'll take a Sharpie and they'll write on the outside of that plastic wrap, do not open, do not use. And then they keep it in this area that it's administratively, statutorily required to be kept, and they've met that requirement. And so now they can be accredited, or now they pass this inspection or whatever. If it's not that kind of bullshit thing going on, the agencies, again, like I said, they go the cheapest route and they get the cheapest stuff they can get, and it just may be a basic first aid kit, or it may be something where they can only get one thing and they give them out, or they only have so many things and they give them out to the patrol sergeants or something like that. So agencies go for the simplest, cheapest thing, and those are the basic things. And you have to go above those basic things to be really good at providing good level of care for pre-hospital care. You've got to get that TCCC training, you got to get that tactical medical training, and you got to get the equipment that is going to be useful in that kind of scenario. You need to get tourniquets, you need to get chest seals, you need to get decompression needles, you need to get airways. You've got to get that stuff, because a Band-Aid from a first aid kit is not going to do a fucking thing for a gunshot hole in someone's chest. It's not going to help them one bit. So you've got to get this stuff first and foremost for you, right? We'll all talk about scene safety, right? Like, who's number one on scene safety? It's you. You're number one. So approach it from that mindset, saving your ass, because the ambulance might not get there on time. Secondarily, is to save your teammates' ass. And third is to save other people, rest of the public.
A difficult time reaching the location due to heavy traffic. Officers.
So when they throw her in the back of this vehicle and they take off, I have no idea if they were rendering aid to her in the back of the vehicle. Someone was back there with her, holding pressure on her, trying to get she said shot in or they said shot in abdomen. I don't know exactly where her wounds are. I don't know if they're, putting pressure on there, if it's a little bit higher in the thoracic cavity, if they're putting a chest seal on, if they're doing rescue breaths for her. I have no idea if anyone's in the back doing anything for her. If they're just throwing her in the back of the patrol car and they're taking off and going, that's going back to the old days of what I talked about, the fucking local funeral home sending a hearse out to pick someone up and then just driving as fast as they can to get to the hospital. Sure, that's kind of helping, but while en route, there's no care being given to that person. So in this instance, they're delivering damn near 1930s level medical care. 2022, and there's the possibility that they're delivering 1930s level medical care. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened. There could have been someone in the back of that car treating her. They just didn't say if that's what was going on.
We made the quick decision to transport the victim to the hospital in a patrol vehicle. Tragically, the victim was pronounced deceased at a local hospital. The suspect was pronounced deceased on scene. As you watch this portion of the video, slowed down and zoomed in, you can now observe that the slide of the weapon was jammed and there was no magazine in the magazine well. Please keep in mind that these body cameras are usually placed around chest level on the officers, and their point of view is higher than their body cameras.
Same
It
shit
is
I talked about
important to
earlier.
remember that our officers were faced with a hostage situation involving a man holding a gun against a woman he had already shot, causing life-threatening injuries, who is refusing to comply with orders. Our hearts and prayers go out to everyone involved in and affected by this tragic incident. It's another vivid reminder of just how dangerous and violent offenders can become, and about the bravery of officers who put themselves in harm's way to protect the public.
Yeah. I think they did release the name on this one. Let me take a quick look. They don't go into detail about this incident, what has caused it, what their relationship is, or anything like that. Again, I'm just looking at one article, but they did mention who the people were. 31-year-old Shaylin Hill of Austin, and the man is 38-year-old Jay Hopson. And that's it. That's from NBC DFW. I wish they would have given more explanation about what their relationship is. I'm assuming that this is potentially a domestic kind of thing. But it could be this guy carjacked this vehicle in that other jurisdiction, and this woman is a complete stranger to them and is a complete and totally innocent victim of a violent offender. Or it could be a domestic type of incident where, again, the woman is a victim. Not saying that, just because she knows him, she's not a victim. But it could be that she does know him. They are, in some type of relationship, or were in some type of relationship, and he had taken her hostage or something like that. Don't know what the circumstances are. I really wish that they would provide more information in things like this to give people a better idea of what's going on. No idea what this guy's criminal background is. If it was a domestic kind of thing, there's a possibility that, he did not have any prior criminal history or anything like that. Domestics can be some very dangerous things. They can be probably one of the most dangerous things that police can go get involved in. It could potentially be more dangerous than police responding to a bank robbery call. I don't have any numbers in front of me or anything like that to back up that thought, but when you think about how many officers have been injured in domestic violence calls all across the nation, and how many officers have been injured in bank robbery shootouts, I don't know. At first thought, I tend to think and believe that more officers have been hurt during domestics than they have from bank robbery incidents. And they can be very volatile situations. People are affected by their emotions, and their emotions are robbing them of their ability to think reasonably. People who are of logical mind are, decently minded people that you never think would do anything crazy. They can sometimes end up doing crazy shit during domestic disputes because they are so emotionally wrecked and have such high emotions running through them that it robs them of their ability to reasonably think. Just like fear can rob a person of their ability to reasonably think and do things logically. So it could be a domestic, and dude's went off the fucking deep end, has no criminal background whatsoever, and he's done this. Or it could be that he has actually, taken a random ass stranger hostage, and if that's the case, then I would say there's probably a pretty good chance that that person has most likely had prior police involvement, been involved in the criminal justice system. Taking people hostage and shooting them, that's pretty deep. You would think that people like that would have in their background some evidence showing that they have had instances of being involved in crimes before, and possibly even having shown a propensity for violence. And so, with that being said, how this country deals with violent offenders is just wrong. I don't think that we are doing enough in this country to protect the people, the good people in this country, against violent people. Way too many violent offenders out there are being released early on low bonds. Too many violent people out there being given plea deals, pleading guilty to something in exchange for having some of their charges amended down to something lesser, having lesser sentencing being given to them, doing less time in jail and prison. Too many people having probation, too many people getting parole, too many people just not serving a long enough sentence like they should be. People given a sentence of 10 years, but because they complete some bullshit classes while they're in prison and have good behavior, they get out sooner than 10 years. They get to go up for parole. They only got to serve X amount of percent of time, and then they're eligible for parole to get out early. It's a fucking mess. It really is. There needs to be a change in how we deal with violent offenders. We need to get hard on crime. I'm okay with releasing some, people with drug convictions early to make room for violent people, right? Like, I'm okay with letting some people go to make more room for others. And I think that for sure we need to be locking away violent offenders for long periods of time. There needs to be maximum mandatory sentencing guidelines in place for violent offenders. If you're involved in some type of violent crime, whether it's burglary, robbery, assaulting a person with or without a weapon, rape, whatever, if it's something that is violent or creates the potential for a lot of violence to occur, then there should be no plea deals offered for a person like that. There should be no getting out of jail or prison early. If you get 10 years for assaulting someone, then it needs to be exactly 10 fucking years, not a day less. And it needs to be written into the law that while they're in prison, if they are a behavioral problem, they make threats against prison officials, they fight other inmates, they act aggressive and hostile, then that means that they are showing signs that they are not ready to be released to public, and they should have their time extended. So if they want to act stupid and go on and be about their bad self and be Billy Badass, well, they can do it all day long and stay in prison a lot longer. Turn that 10-year sentence into a 15-year sentence for all I care. There are certain people, violent people, that we do not need walking around in public. We do not need them with us. They are a cancer to our society. Again, like I said, I have no idea what this person's background is, but if it's not a domestic issue, then I would say with pretty damn good certainty this person's had prior criminal history before, and it's probably something violent as well. But anyway, that is it on this video. If you like what you hear and see, go ahead and give me a like and a share. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more Monday quarterback videos. Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching.